Look, I'm going to be straight with you. The Las Vegas Raiders just wrapped up day 1 of mandatory minicamp, and there is a lot happening inside that building right now. Not the kind of noise that gets manufactured during slow news cycles. Real things, meaningful things. 3 quarterbacks all talking to the media, 2 players absent without clear explanation, and a franchise that is quietly trying to figure out what it actually is heading into this season. I've been following this team closely enough to know when something deserves genuine attention, and today deserves your full attention. Let me start with the absent situation because I think it sets the tone before we even get to the quarterback room. 2 players did not show up for day 1 of mandatory minicamp. Now, mandatory minicamp is exactly what it sounds like. Mandatory. When guys miss it, you notice. One of those names was Jamal McCoy, and honestly, I'm not going to spend a lot of energy on that one. He's been dealing with a leg issue, a knee situation that's been lingering, and the organization is being smart about how they manage his recovery timeline. You don't rush a player back into full practice reps when his knee is still finding its baseline. That's just good medical management, and I respect it. The name that I cannot move past as easily is Nico Dean, and I want to be careful here because I don't have the full picture. None of us on the outside do, but Nico Dean missing mandatory minicamp with no clear explanation circulating, with no injury report backing it up. That's the kind of thing that sits in the back of your mind. He was apparently present at the facility during media day, which means he's not completely disconnected from what's happening, but he was not on the field. He was somewhere in the building, not participating. And when you're a linebacker on a team that is trying to establish a new identity under new leadership, that's just not the optic you want associated with your name this early in the offseason process. Now, I'll give you the official word, because it matters. Assistant head coach Mike McCoy handled the post-practice press conference, and when the question came up directly, is there any concern within the organization about Nico Dean's absence? McCoy was measured and direct. He said there's no concern. He called Dean a pro. He talked about the priority being to have everyone fresh and healthy when the season opener arrives, not to force every single rep in every single practice session. He framed it as part of a bigger picture. Get through minicamp, get through training camp, and have the right people available when the games that actually count begin. And you know what? I hear that. I understand that logic. A coaching staff that has full visibility into what's happening behind closed doors always has information that we don't. If they say don't panic, I'm not going to panic. I'm also not going to pretend that it doesn't register, because of course it does. We're talking about a linebacker who has had a complicated relationship with availability over the past stretch, and when that pattern continues, even in the offseason, even at mandatory minicamp, it's a data point, not a crisis, a data point. The difference matters, and when training camp rolls around, that's when we'll have a much clearer sense of where Nico Dean actually stands with this team and with his own readiness. For now, I'm choosing to take McCoy at his word and let the process play out. But let me shift us to where the real weight of today lived, because the quarterback room is the story. It was the story before the Raiders even took the field, and it was absolutely the story once the press conferences started rolling in. 3 quarterbacks, 3 completely different situations, 3 completely different emotional frequencies, and yet somehow, from everything I'm seeing and hearing, they're coexisting in a way that actually gives me genuine hope for what this offense can become. Let me start with Fernando Mendoza, because I will be honest with you. Every time I hear this kid speak, something about it gets me. I don't fully understand it yet, and I'm not going to overthink it, but there's something about the way he carries himself that feels different from what you typically get from a young quarterback stepping into a situation this complicated. He came in as the #1 overall pick at his position. The weight of that selection follows him into every room he enters. Raider Nation is already emotionally invested in what he represents, and that pressure, the kind that comes from being the thing a fan base has pinned its hope to, that is a genuinely difficult thing to manage when you're still learning the playbook. And he's not pretending it's easy. That's what I respect about him. He admitted flat out that he's been making mistakes at rookie minicamp, at OTAs, and even now at mandatory minicamp. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't dance around it. He said, yes, there are things I've gotten wrong, and after practice when I'm thinking about them, I feel frustrated. But then he said something that I found genuinely insightful for a player so early in his professional development. He said that frustration is healthy, that when you're upset about a mistake, it drives you to focus more intensely on not repeating it. He's not spiraling into self-doubt when things go sideways. He's using the discomfort as fuel, channeling it into preparation, into film study, into the kind of repetitive, deliberate practice that separates players who plateau from players who develop. He talked about reading his notes every single night, going through the common themes in his mistakes, identifying the technique patterns that keep showing up, and then making it his mission to have those corrections show up naturally, not as a forced mental checklist during live reps, but as automatic responses, because he understands something that a lot of young quarterbacks take years to learn. If you're thinking about what not to do while you're in the middle of executing, you've already lost the battle. The goal is to do the preparation work so thoroughly that the right decision happens without conscious effort. In flow state, the way football is supposed to be played at the highest level. The question about handling expectations was equally revealing. He didn't hide from the reality of the situation. He acknowledged the fanfare, acknowledged the excitement, and then calmly explained how he neutralizes the weight of it. He said expectations exist in the future tense, and if he stays locked in on what's in front of him right now, the rep he's currently taking, the concept he's currently learning, the correction he's currently implementing, then the future takes care of itself. He's not trying to be the franchise quarterback. He's trying to be the best version of himself today. And one day, if he keeps stacking those days, those two things become the same thing. He's currently getting reps with the 3s and occasionally with the 2s. For people reading too much into that, relax. That's exactly where a rookie at his stage in the learning curve should be. He's not supposed to be running the first-team offense in mandatory minicamp as a young player still absorbing a professional playbook for the first time. What matters is how he's attacking those reps, how he's treating each one like it carries real consequence, how he's building habits when the pressure isn't at its highest, so that when it is, those habits are already built. And everything I'm hearing from people inside that building suggests he's doing exactly that. Now let me get into Aiden O'Connell, because I think his situation is one of the most genuinely interesting human stories in the entire Raiders organization right now, and it doesn't get enough serious analysis. This is a guy going into his 4th NFL season with his 6th offensive coordinator. Let that sink in for a second. 6 different offensive coordinators in 4 years. That's not a stat. That's a kind of professional turbulence that would break most people. Every time he gets comfortable in a system, every time he starts to build chemistry with the coaches around him and the rhythm of an offense, something changes. The carousel spins again, and he has to start over. And yet here he is, still competing, still sharp, still earning respect from people inside the building who are watching him work every single day. Clint Kubiak made a point of acknowledging him publicly. And now Kirk Cousins, who has seen more of the league than most, doubled down on that assessment in his own press conference today. Cousins said that O'Connell has everything he needs to have a long, successful career in this league. He said Aiden's best football is still ahead of him. And then he added something that I found genuinely moving when you sit with it. He said his own 4th season was the turning point in his career, the year everything clicked, the year things opened up for him. And Aiden O'Connell is in his 4th season right now. That's not a coincidence that Cousins is drawing that parallel. That's a veteran who has studied this game deeply enough to recognize patterns, and who is telling us in the clearest possible terms that he sees something real in O'Connell that the broader conversation hasn't fully caught up to yet. When Aiden was asked about the balance between mentoring the younger quarterbacks and still pushing for his own opportunity to start, his answer was one of the more mature things I've heard from a quarterback in that kind of position. He said straightforwardly that withholding information from Fernando or from anyone else in that room doesn't benefit him or the team. A rising tide raises all boats. If the room collectively understands the offense better, if everyone is speaking the same language, then the overall quality of that group goes up. And when you're competing for a job in an environment like that, you want to win it because you're genuinely the best option, not because you hoarded knowledge and kept someone else in the dark. That's not a winning culture. That's a small, fearful way to operate, and O'Connell clearly doesn't want any part of it. He also spoke about what he's ultimately chasing, finding his place in this league as a legitimate long-term starter. He mentioned Sam Darnold's revival, mentioned other quarterbacks who found the right situation after a rough start somewhere else, and said that's the blueprint he's looking at for himself. Some guys need a new environment, a new coach, a new context to unlock what they were always capable of. He doesn't know if that happens in Las Vegas or somewhere else. He's honest about that, but he knows what the goal is, and he's working toward it with everything he has right now. I've got to give him real credit for that. It would be so easy to quietly collect a paycheck, go through the motions, and preserve yourself emotionally by not caring too much. He is clearly not doing that. And then there's Kirk Cousins, the elder statesman of this quarterback room, the veteran presence that, in a lot of ways, sets the standard for how this whole thing operates. Cousins has been around long enough to have developed a PhD-level understanding of what a functional quarterback room looks like and what a dysfunctional one looks like. And by all accounts, what he's finding in Las Vegas is something he can genuinely work within. His ability to simultaneously compete for the starting job, mentor a rookie first-round pick, and publicly support Aiden O'Connell's career aspirations, all at the same time, without any visible contradiction or tension. That's a rare quality. Most quarterbacks at his level have egos that make that kind of environment impossible. He's built himself into something different. The fact that Cousins is actively drawing a connection between his own fourth-year breakthrough and where O'Connell is right now. That's not something a selfish quarterback does. That's something a man who genuinely believes in the people around him does, and it creates a tone in that room. When the veteran is elevating everyone rather than hoarding the spotlight, the whole group rises. When the rookie is attacking every rep with intensity and intellectual preparation, the standard gets set. When the guy in between is sharing everything he knows because he understands that transparency builds better teams, you've got something real. You've got a culture worth building on. Now, the big question that hangs over all of this, the one nobody can answer yet, the one that will define the Raiders' entire season, is who lines up as the starter when Game 1 kicks off. And honestly, right now, in this moment, I don't think anyone inside that building knows for certain. And I mean that in the most sincere, non-dramatic way possible. This isn't a competition that exists for appearances. This isn't a front office going through the required motions before rubber stamping the veteran. The offensive-minded coaching staff around these three quarterbacks appears to genuinely believe in an open evaluation process, and they have the tools to conduct one properly. Kirk Cousins brings proven production, leadership instincts sharpened by years of high-level play, and the kind of system familiarity that lets him process information faster than younger players in live reps. But he also brings the weight of his injury history, the natural questions about where he is physically, and whether that version of himself still exists the way it did. Aiden O'Connell brings 4 years of development in this specific building, an intimate knowledge of how the Raiders operate, and a chip on his shoulder that comes from perpetually being underestimated and perpetually surviving anyway. And Fernando Mendoza brings something you can't manufacture and can't teach. Genuine raw upside, the kind that makes an entire organization think about the long game differently. What I keep coming back to is that the Raiders have built themselves an unusual kind of problem, the good kind. A quarterback room where all three players are pushing each other, respecting each other, and operating with a shared understanding that the best player has to be the guy. No politics, no entitlement, no quiet resentment bubbling under the surface. From everything coming out of that facility today, the internal temperature is healthy, the conversations are productive, the preparation is serious, and that matters more than people realize when you're trying to rebuild a franchise identity from the foundation up. There are real weapons surrounding whoever wins this job. The offensive coaching staff has earned genuine respect around the league. The pieces exist for this offense to be something legitimate if the quarterback situation resolves itself correctly. The question is, which quarterback is the right match for this specific moment? And the honest answer is that we're going to have to let the process tell us. Minicamp, training camp, preseason reps, the totality of the evaluation, all of it feeds into a decision that will shape this franchise's direction for years. What I know right now, after today, is that this quarterback room is worth watching. The human stories inside it are compelling. The competitive dynamic is real. And whatever comes out the other side of this evaluation, the Raiders are not walking into the season with a dead quarterback situation. There's life in that room. There's fight in that room. And that, at the very minimum, is a better starting point than where this franchise has been too many times before.